You're listening to Australia's #1 tech podcast. Every week, join hosts Brad and Jason here on the Tech Webcast. Download our iPhone app, follow us on Twitter at Tech Webcast, and visit us online at techwebcast.info. Here are your hosts, Brad and Jason.
Welcome to episode 157 of the Tech Webcast podcast, recorded on Saturday, the 8th of October, 2011. Tech Webcast is recorded live every Saturday and rebroadcast on the Aussie Tech Head Show on Thursday nights at 7. Today's hosts are Brad, Jason, and Aaron. Good afternoon, Brad.
Hey, Jason. How are you, buddy?
Pretty damn good. Very, very excited for the future.
Yeah, I was going to ask you next question. iPhone 4S on Friday, mate?
Yes! Oh my God, yes!
You can't wait.
Yes, it's going to be much better than my 3GS. Going to blow it out of the water, dual cores and 8-megapixel cameras and all that sort of stuff.
Yep. And
very excited for it. Even if some people are like, oh, it's only a little bit upgrade from the iPhone 4.
Yeah.
You got iPhone 3GS, it's a bloody good upgrade from the iPhone 3GS.
Definitely, I agree. But I've got an iPhone 4, so I'm not going to rush in and get one. I'm going to wait for a bit and see what happens. And
see how it goes.
Yeah,
yeah, it's good enough features for you.
Yeah,
I'll
exactly.
give you a review or something.
Yeah, definitely, mate. That'd be good. What else has been happening during the week? Jason, any other news, mate? You got some news there I want to start with? And that's
I'll say hello to Aaron.
Aaron, yeah, I forgot about that. Aaron, how are you, mate?
Hey, boys.
Sorry, this is a different show.
Oh, you're here too? We didn't know.
Different show today because we don't have a guest on, so we're just going to cover the Apple event.
Yeah, some news, info.
Yeah.
Bit of a chat.
Yeah, a bit of a chat. That's going to be good.
Nice and relaxed.
Yep.
All right, let's get into the news.
Sure.
Samsung says it will file patent infringement claims in France and Italy to ban the sale of Apple's new iPhone less than a day after it was unveiled, intensifying a legal battle between the two top brands. It will also file legal cases in other countries to stop the sale of the iPhone 4S. After further review, the South Korean maker of Galaxy smartphones and tablets said in a statement. Samsung has emerged as a credible challenger to Apple's mobile devices, and the two companies are battling over patents in courtrooms around the world. They have sued each other in 10 countries, involving more than 20 cases since April. Facebook has been caught telling porkies by an Australian technologist whose revelations a site tracks its 800 million users, even when they are logged out, have embroiled Facebook in a global public policy and legal nightmare. Facebook's assurances that we have no interest in tracking people have been laid bare by a new Facebook patent dated this month that describes a method for tracking information about the activities of users of a social networking system while on another domain. Nick Kubrilovich's blog post, which revealed that tracking cookies monitor Facebook users whenever they surf websites with the Facebook like button, has led to political outrage in the US and Europe. Telstra has revealed it will sell an LTE-capable Android phone early in 2012 that will run on its new 4G network. The HTC Raider 4G, or the HTC Holiday, may not be called as such in Australia, but the Telstra exclusive device will be the first LTE-capable smartphone to be sold in Australia. Whether or not Telstra and HTC will call the phone the Raider 4G in Australia is unknown. At the moment, South Korea is the only country to launch the phone under that name. However, a similar variant of the Android device is rumoured to be called the HTC Holiday for AT&T customers in the US. AT&T's LTE network runs on the 700 MHz spectrum, though, whereas Telstra's new 4G network uses the 1700 MHz band. And Steve Wozniak, who started Apple with high school friend Steve Jobs in a California garage more than 3 decades ago, said news of his partner's death struck him just like the shootings of John Lennon and John F. Kennedy. I'm totally awestruck, a bit shocked and a bit surprised, Wozniak, 61, said in an interview with Bloomberg. I did not expect it. It felt a lot like you had just heard that, John Lennon got shot, or JFK, or Martin Luther King. Jobs, who resigned as Apple's chief executive officer in August, died on Thursday, the Cupertino, California-based company said. He was diagnosed in 2003 with the neuroendocrine tumor, a rare form of pancreatic cancer, and had a liver transplant in 2009. So there's pretty bad news with Steve going this week.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it's very sad, and it's not good. It wasn't good.
Apparently, I was also reading that for the last few years he's been gathering people such as an ex-Harvard professor and others, and started his own Steve Jobs University to teach people at Apple how to think like he does for when he wasn't going to be there anymore, and they'd be able to carry on his tradition.
Oh, well, that's great.
So he's going to be training managers and other people in charge how to think like him and keep Apple doing things the Steve Jobs way.
That's great.
So
Now,
he's gonna be a control freak even in after death.
Yes.
that's good. Now, where were you, Jason, when you heard the news, mate? Just before we go and answer.
I was at
question.
work. One of the guys I work with was, I think he was checking his Twitter account, and he said, "Oh, there's news that Steve Jobs has just died." And I'm like, "What? Is this one of those fake news that you hear all the time, or is this a real one?" And then I jumped on Twitter, and suddenly it was flooded with all the news about it. So I looked it up on some news websites, and even Apple.com had it there, so it had to be real. Bit unfortunate. I've actually, something else that I wanted to add was yesterday I used my iBooks application on my iPhone and pre-ordered the Steve Jobs biography by Walter Isaacson. I tried to get it on my Kindle app from Amazon, but it's not available in my country, as is always the case. So I went to the iBook store and found it there and got it pre-ordered for $19.99.
Good stuff, mate. Enjoy.
I've already got the Dick Smith biography and Bill Gates one. I think it was Faster Than Light or something like that.
Are they voice when you read them? Are they is that voice as well, or just you just have to read it?
No, they're all those ones. I've actually got the physical books, but this is the first one I've bought. The first actual book I bought in the iBook store, so it'll just be reading in the iBook app.
Oh, okay, cool. Good
on
stuff.
my iPad. Should be interesting.
Yeah, and what about you, Aaron? What are your thoughts on all this, mate? Happening on Thursday and stuff.
Oh, well, it's obviously a massive shock. I mean, and the timing, like the day after the iPhone 4S launch,
definitely
is particularly shocking. There was a million questions that were raised after that launch that it was basically pretty lame. 15 months since the iPhone 4 launch, that's the best they could come up with. And then just the very next day, that was the last thing you're expecting to hear. And I guess once we all found that out, it made a lot more sense. That, obviously, Steve Jobs hasn't just been sick this year, but he really has been on his deathbed. And it's been a huge distraction in that company, obviously. And so now we knew why each of the executives was so somber throughout that whole appearance. Johnny Ive, who's the head designer at Apple, he wasn't even there. They're sort of saying that he's probably too distraught to even sort of show up and be in public. I guess it made a lot more sense now that Apple really sort of just tried to hold back on doing anything too ambitious, because they really have been doing this changeover, taking everything off of Steve, and really this whole thing of him just becoming the chairman of the board in the meantime was just really just a way to distract the public from catching on to the fact that he was about to die.
Yeah. I think it was macOS Ken who'd said that he went to the launch of the iPhone 4S and there was a chair at the front that was empty throughout the whole show. He didn't understand why it was there, but it had some curtains around it or something, and it was reserved for nobody to sit, and it was sort of like a placement for where Steve would have been if he could have been there.
Anyway,
pretty sad news.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is sad news. And Robert Scoble and all them sort of people have done great stuff, dedication to him and stuff, that sort of thing, and did some good videos and that sort of good. So
he said that he'd written a article doing a little bit of a bash about how disappointed it was in the iPhone 4S launch. It wasn't a big fanfare with the fireworks that they usually have, but then now that he's realised that the reason that was because everybody was rather upset and they already had this booked, so they just had to push through, get the announcement done so that people would know what's going on, and you couldn't really rebook all these people some had flown in and paid thousands of dollars just to get there when something this bad had happened. So they just had to push on regardless of how they felt, whether they really wanted to be there or just at home where it was quiet or even just sitting in the office or something. But they did a very good job, I think, and they should be commended for the effort that they still put on, even though a lot of them were probably full of grief.
I agree with that, Jason, that they're to be commended that they managed to sort of get through it and still try to get out some of the excitement of what they were doing. But I disagree in the fact that at the end of the day, the show must go on. The company has to keep going. They always knew that was going to happen, and irrespective of what was going on behind the scenes, it's still really lame and unacceptable that Apple really just sort of mailed it in with the iPhone launch this year. Everyone expected an iPhone 5, and it's funny how you've seen a lot of sort of Apple fanboys have been a little snarky on their blogs in the past couple of days, sort of saying things like, all these idiots take things out of proportion and the expectations are set too high and that sort of stuff. I disagree with that completely. I mean, everyone deserves to have high expectations of the iPhone because every single iPhone launch, every single time you watch the launch and you just go, damn, they just one-upped everyone again, you know? And you can always expect that sort of stuff. And this is the first time where you just sort of had to sit back and think, there is not a single thing about that phone that doesn't already exist in a phone, and didn't one-up the competition at all. And on top of that, they just created a great big gap between the next iPhone launch when they will potentially one-up anyone again, if at all, ever again. It's sort of like they've set themselves up to be playing catch up from now on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, at least matching what other people have in their features. I can't really think of what else they could add on, although I was a bit surprised and don't really understand the point of the cards app that they've written. I mean, anybody could have written something like that. And the friend finder, while nice, anybody could write that as well. So it's not like a major exciting feature. As for me, going from 3GS to 4S is going to be a big leap, and I'm jumping over the 4, which has had its problems and has a few things that are not quite as high specifications as the 4S. It's not a giant leap, but I'll be happy with my 4S when I get it. And I think a lot of other 3GS people who just finished their contract will happily get the 4S, especially since you won't be able to get a 4 other than the 8 gig one, which nobody really wants unless you want it for your teenage kid to just have their own one.
Yeah,
I mean, my daughter's going to get my 3GS, and it's 16 gig. It should do her. It's not going to have a SIM or anything, but I wouldn't be giving her a real phone at this stage. But
Yeah.
I don't really know what you would be putting in the 5. Do you think from now on they're going to have 5, 5S, 6, 6S? Is it going to be like that from now on, or
I'll
is this
tell you
just
what.
one that they missed out?
They were probably thinking. I wrote an article about this early in the week after the iPhone 4S launch, because everyone's sort of wondering what happens. You know, where'd the iPhone 5 go? Why didn't they do it? My best guess is that, to answer your question, Jason, I feel that sort of this time 12 months ago, that's what the plan for Apple would have been. You know, definitely just to sort of come up with a major design every 2 years, and each year there's basically like a 4 and a 4.5 and a 5 and a 5.5. You know what I mean? Just an incremental upgrade. And their upgrade of the iPad earlier this year is indicative of that sort of mentality, because they're looking at the iPad and sort of saying, well, we won the tablet wars straight up, so we don't need to compete against ourselves. We can just do a very monumental upgrade and people will buy them anyway. And I think that they had the same attitude towards the iPhone as well. But really, you know, it takes them 2 years to build a phone, so they've got to think that far ahead. And so it was really only 2009, the end of 2009, that Android usage exploded, like really exploded. And even right now, the current market share of smartphones in the US, for example, is 43% Android. Yeah, that's happened over the past 18 months. Towards the end of 2009, Android market share was about 13% or 17%, but nothing more than that. To go to 43, it's so ridiculous. And so what I feel is that, number one, there's definitely an iPhone 5 in Apple campuses, right? Because it takes them so long to build these phones. But what I feel is that they would have thought a while ago, we need to speed up. You know, we need to get out a newer version quicker. And I feel that they tried to and couldn't. And that's why we didn't see one earlier in the week. There's far too much being leaked into the press to make it obvious that they tried to. Yeah, and this is what people are being snarky about, like going, don't be ridiculous, there's no way they would have tried. Of course they would have tried. They had to. And like I was saying before earlier, it's left them with egg on their face that they've got a really unspectacular phone that they tried to launch and make look special, and it didn't. And on top of all of that, the iPhone 4 was such a huge disappointment. I mean, the original iPhone form factor had that curved sort of background. It felt so good in the hand. And the reality is that with the design of the iPhone 4 with that flat back, those edges sort of rub on your hands a bit when you're holding it. It was a bit of a mistake. They obviously screwed up with the antenna as well, with that sort of design. That's why they made it that sort of shape. And so really, and like my wife, for example, she thinks that my iPhone 4 is ugly. Yeah, and she thinks her 3GS is really good looking. There's so many people with that sort of mentality that were really excited to see a new shape of the iPhone. Like, really look at that 4, get rid of that antenna design around the edges, and make it a bit better. Get that curved edge back on it, whilst keeping the majority of it flat, so it'll sit sturdy on a desk, and really come up with a good combination of both designs that would appease both people, types of people that like it. And they just didn't. They just took the iPhone 4 design and put new insides inside. And that is disappointing in its own right,
I think I was extremely surprised that they kept the glass on the back of the. They just had so many reports of that just smashing for no reason, and I was hoping they'd at least get rid of that. Now they've put in the Apple Care Plus plans now, where if you pay a bit more to get your Apple Care in the first place, you can replace problems with the phone for $49 twice, which obviously I guess would include smashing the glass and that sort of thing. Yeah. But I don't really know if that's worthwhile. A lot of people are saying by the time you put in the cost and everything, you might as well go to a fix-it shop and get them to replace it themselves.
Yeah, well, you pay for the convenience because, with any Apple product now, you can go down to an Apple retail store and you just go, this is your problem now, fix it. And they'll just replace things on the spot, no questions asked, because
we'll give you a refurbished one.
Yeah, and that's great, So... Yeah, and you make a good point about the glass and all that too. It's pretty lame. Even the bezel, top and bottom, it's a little bit thicker on the iPhone 4 than it is on the previous designs, and that's because the phone had to be a little bit taller to fit more inside of it. It is a bit of a turn-off. Yeah, there's a lot of trends now with other phone manufacturers moving towards really making the screen consume the whole phone. Yep. My Desire HD, for example, very, very thin bezel at the top to have a bit of a speaker, and that's it. The screen.
That was the rumour for the iPhone 5, wasn't it? Do you think maybe they have really did want to release something like that this year, but as some people said, there were problems getting their manufacturing companies or their own manufacturers to be able to do that screen, and that's why the 5, they said, look, we've been trying for months. We just can't do it. We've got a ton of these iPhone 4s. We've got machines that we already know can do it perfectly. Why don't we just use what we've got, maybe tweak it a bit, chuck in some extra stuff and get that out of the way so people are happy for another year, and we've just bought ourselves an extra 12 months to try and get this iPhone 5 thing straightened out.
Exactly, you nailed it on the head. And the other strategy as well, like in response to Android, just to try and shake things up, is that there was a rumor of Apple switching to a biannually release. So, so it could be that we see the next iPhone in 6 months' time, and then they'll release another one in October next year as well. And so I would say that that's probably Plan B. This 4S was always supposed to be about upgrade the insides, but use some cheap parts on it, like a cheaper screen and things of that nature, so they could sell it for cheap. But when it's sort of fallen through, making an iPhone 5 and bringing that to market, then basically putting the nice screens on the 4S and the A5 chip inside was like Plan B, just to get something out there to say it's new, and that's what they've done.
What does Brad think about this?
Personally, I don't know. Really, to tell you the truth, I'm sort of more looking forward to the OS 5, really, to me personally. But I'll wait to, as I said to you before the show, I'll see some reviews and stuff. I'm not going to rush out and get it straight away. And
at this point, I think I'm quite interested and curious about the Siri application.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's going to be a major seller, but I think it'll be fun to use. So there's a lot of speculation at the moment. Is it going to be like the FaceTime app, which everyone's like, oh my God, that's amazing, and now only a few people use it?
Yeah, no one gives
or is it going to be something that people are going to be using a lot more often? What's your opinion of Siri, Aaron?
It's a bells and whistles sort of thing, You nailed it on the head. Like, it'll be fun to play with the first couple of days, and then after that, it's just boring.
Yeah.
I mean, there's people have a sort of people are pretty private with their phones. Like, younger people would much rather SMS people than talk on the phone, because they can do that in silence. So if you're sort of sitting there, like in public, like saying, book me an appointment to the gynecologist next Thursday, I mean, no one's going to do that.
That's a good point. I mean? That's a very good point there, Aaron. You made a good point there.
I do think it'll be useful if I'm at home and I want to compose email on my phone rather than trying to type on that little keyboard. Apparently you can actually do dictation in any app and it'll type stuff up for you as well, which would be very handy. But the other thing people are worried about, is this like the Google Voice one where you'll dictate out a letter and it'll get sent to the Apple servers or Siri servers get analysed there and then sent back to you, because that's a privacy issue where the server has now got a copy of your voice saying whatever it is that you want to do. That could be private, it could be illegal, it could be anything. And is that going to be kept there for investigation? If somebody finds out that you've done something wrong, can they get your voice out of the server saying this actual thing? And then obviously voice pattern's going to be pretty much provable it was you who said it. There's a bit of a worry about privacy. I'm not sure if Siri does all the work just on the phone. I know if you're asking for where's the closest cafes to me or how many days left in the year, it sends it to Wolfram Alpha and gets a lot of info back from there. But there's going to be another question about privacy on there that I think Apple is going to have to fight people with cases there as well.
I think that what you'll find is that what the application will do is that it won't upload a copy of the recording of your voice to iCloud. The application will actually digitize and break down your voice into usable components. It goes through things like looking for keywords, looking for it's machine learning, contextually trying to understand what it was you actually said and how that matches to things that it can do. So it'll pretty much things like a calendar appointment, for example, and especially if you have iCloud integration, it's going to break down your voice on the phone. It's going to figure out what the instruction was on the phone. It'll record the calendar appointment on the phone, and it'll be the calendar appointment that's uploaded through the internet to sync that with your iCloud account. There is no possible way that it could upload a recording of your voice without potentially getting into huge trouble. So I don't think that will be
even though we know Google Voice does that, for sure.
I would think that if Apple was smart, then they would have learned from Google's failures and not put themselves in the same position to get in trouble like that. That's what I think. And we're all guessing at this point, but that's what logically makes sense. And Apple are the kind of people who just think about every single detail.
They're not Facebook, you're saying?
Well, yeah, exactly. But getting back to what you're saying earlier about how Siri was really like the main feature of the 4S. I mean, it's not like you needed to have a 4S to have Siri in the first place, because Siri was an app on the App Store that anyone could download with any iPhone.
And it already worked.
Yeah, and it already worked.
That was going to be my next question is, do you think they needed the dual-core A5 to do all the processing with Siri? But obviously people have been using on their 3GS and the 4 that's not the case. But in the future, after next Friday, you're not going to be able to have Siri on any device except for a 4S. I think it's going to be disabled if you've already downloaded it and activated on your 3GS or 4, isn't it?
They turn the servers off. Even if you've had the app, it's going to be worthless to you because the servers won't be able to talk to the app at all. They won't be turned on anymore.
But really, another forced upgrade feature.
Yeah, look, it's the main thing here is that what you saw in that presentation is that they picked a couple of stupid things like iCards, which they normally wouldn't even bother with in a presentation, and they just filled up the time because they had to try and stretch and find things to say that were unique about the phone, just to try and get anyone to care about it, or you know what I mean, to get excited about it. They were just trying to do these things. It was manufactured. And with the CPU as well, obviously it's not going to need the CPU. And here's an interesting thing about the CPU used in the 4S, right? It's the same CPU as the iPad 2. Okay, and I just have some specifications here. I just want to quickly go over that with you guys because you'll find this really interesting. Now, every iPhone up until now has been underclocked. The CPU's been underclocked. The iPhone 4, for example, the A4 chip is a 1 gigahertz CPU underclocked to 800 megahertz. Now, and that's a single core. So the A5 chip is a dual core chip, and it's also 1 gigahertz, but it will run at 1 gigahertz. And just like on the iPad, the iPads were never underclocked because they didn't need to. You know, they had the bigger batteries inside. So Apple are there, and again, trying to think of things to say are unique about the iPhone 4S. The big thing they're pushing is the gaming aspect, like they did with that CPU in the iPad 2. And the funny thing is that when you remember to this time 12 months ago when they had the iPod event in September last year and announcing the iPod Touch and how that was basically the iPhone 4 with the phone capabilities pulled out of it. They set a statistic then that blew everyone away. Up until then, they had 8 billion downloads of apps in the iOS App Store, and 1 billion of those downloads were of games from the iPod Touch alone. So the iPod Touch, you could probably argue, is more of a handheld gaming device than the iPhone.
Yeah.
And so they were there with the 4S saying up to 7 times greater graphics for gameplay on the iPhone. And yet, if you look at an iPhone 4 and ever played a game on it, Rage HD, any of the really insane ones, they look brilliant. You don't need 7 times more powerful graphics capabilities in the iPhone 4 than what was already there. It was already brilliant. And on top of that, they didn't even bother putting this A5 chip in the iPod Touch. That is the more relevant gaming handheld that people are buying for that purpose, and they didn't even do it.
Okay, what have they got in there?
Nothing. It's the same iPod Touch as last year.
It is. So,
okay, but
it's white though. It's white. They've only added white.
Yeah, it's white. Oh my god.
Yeah, it's white. Yeah, that's why. Then that's
to be quite honest, that presentation would have been more exciting if they had just called the iPhone 4 the 4S with the same chip inside and put that chip inside the iPod Touch instead. Because then they would have just absolutely wiped the floor with the asses of Nintendo. It was Sony with all these handhelds they're trying to do. The iPod Touch would have been by far the best handheld gaming device ever. But they didn't even bother doing that. It's perplexing why all of these things that we were expecting to see them do, they didn't do, and they didn't bother doing. And yeah, like you said, Brad, all they did was they just got the exact same iPod Touch and made a white one.
Yeah, definitely.
It's exactly the same.
Yeah, I personally think it was a waste of time doing it.
Well,
just announcing the white iPod Touch, there's nothing new in it. All it is just white. That's all it is. And it's got the OS 5 on it, which is coming out on Thursday for us. What are you looking
for everybody anyway?
Yeah, for everyone. What are you looking forward to, Jason, on it, mate? Using on it?
Not a lot. I've already been using it for months.
Oh, okay. So how do you like it? Like, what about you, Aaron?
I like it. The notifications, they've copied off Android, but the problem is it can be an issue when you've got games. There's a lot of games on the iPhone, particularly if you give the iPhone, and of course it's going to be on the Touch, to kids. They're going to be dragging fingers around, and often while I'm watching either my daughter or nephew playing games, and it has happened to me as well, part of the game involves dragging your finger from the top of the screen down, and that activates the notification center.
Oh, okay.
And then the kid's like, well, what's happened? I'm in the middle of a game. This is just completely taking me out of the experience. And you have to grab the phone off them, zip it back up again. They start playing for a bit more, and zoop, it comes down again. I don't really like that way of activating notification center, even though it's similar to the Android, but there must be another way of doing that so it doesn't interfere with the games. Particularly if you've got something like Fruit Ninja, your fingers are going all over the screen all the time.
Yeah, definitely.
And you go, the game has paused. Something has dropped down from the screen. Kids don't know what to do. If they click on something, it takes them out of the game and launches something else.
Yeah. And what about you, Aaron?
It's a good idea, but it needs a different way of activating it.
Yeah, definitely. What about you, Aaron? What do you think about? What are you looking forward to in the new features coming up? What are you going to use most of?
The two things that I'm really looking forward to with it, number one is that I'm pretty dependent on the app Boxcar. Do you use that at all?
No,
Never heard of it.
Never heard of it.
Boxcar is really just a push notifications app, so you can install connections to Growl on your Mac or PC. Okay. You can integrate all of your different Twitter accounts, your Facebook accounts, and all that, and any activity that happens, Boxcar will push that notification to you onto your phone. And I've actually found, because I've become fed up with Twitter for iPhone personally, and I've switched to Tweetbot, and Tweetbot doesn't do push notifications, so Boxcar is doing that for me. And then Boxcar, you can say to it, if anything's related to Twitter, like a Twitter for notification, then push the view button to Tweetbot. So basically, those two apps are working in tandem for me to replace Twitter for iPhone. But I've actually found that Boxcar has been a bit frustrating, and I'm missing out on notifications. So people have been talking to me on Twitter, and I haven't realized that they were because I didn't get the push notification. So Apple are changing all that with iOS 5, and this sort of expansion of notifications is built into the operating system. You of course will be able to associate your Twitter account directly at an OS level, and so I'll never miss a notification again. And in fact, I'll probably just do all of my work with Twitter straight out of iOS. So I probably won't even use an app anymore. So I'm really looking forward to that. You know, that's going to be handy. And then the other one is
Echo Fon Pro, which has really good notifications.
Yeah, well, look, you know, so that's just what I've been using, and I haven't bothered to learn something new because I knew this was coming up in iOS 5. So that will bail me out there. I won't have to use Boxcar anymore. And just the other thing really quickly is that I've got two phones. So I've got an iPhone and an Android phone. So I've become it's become quite mechanical for me to reach from the top of the screen and swipe down to get that pull down menu. And that's something that Apple have copied from Android with iOS 5. So I tend to do that. I just think to do that on my iPhone sometimes, and I was like, idiot, you know, that's Android, not iPhone. But they're copying that, so I'll be able to do that on either phone, so I won't have to feel like an idiot every time I do that. So
good stuff. For me personally, I'm looking forward to iMessages and notifications and other good things in it. Can't wait. And the cordless part as well, the PC part. You don't have to stick your iPhone up to the computer anymore.
Yeah, the iCloud's pretty neat.
Oh, of course.
Back up all your stuff for you.
iCloud, can't wait. Now, just an off-topic question for you, Jason. Now, someone is looking for a alternative to Wi-Fi. What do you recommend company-wise for best Wi-Fi?
Say that again?
Someone is looking for a Wi-Fi for their house, and they want to use the internet. Do they need to get ADSL, or can they use Wi-Fi as alternative?
Well, there are companies that can send internet to you via Wi-Fi. I suppose you could look into them. There's a couple in Australia. There's one called Unwired.
Unwired,
but
yeah.
you have to be specifically in their area. I tested. They're quite good because you don't need your ADSL, so you don't need to do anything to your phone line. You can just go into a Dick Smith or wherever, get an unwired modem.
Yep.
And you could get your package there when you sign up using the modem. Where I was quite close to the city where I was living, and I couldn't get a signal in the house whatsoever. But the handy thing about it is if you can't get a signal, you just ring them up, say, I'm not getting anything. They try and connect to you, say, try this, try that. If you still can't get a signal, they're happy for you to take it back for a full refund. So you can even do just a test, see how it goes, and if it doesn't work, take it back. So try Unwired. I think they use WiMAX.
Would that work? Would that connect right up to, like I say, a Boxy Box or a Xbox 360? Would that work?
Yeah, connect up to anything, just like ADSL.
All right, good stuff. All right, I'll let that person know. All right, anything else before we go? Mention.
That's
Jason?
it for this.
Yep. Where can they find you on Twitter, mate?
Warlock, WAULOK, and bluebilby.com.
And Aaron?
OzTechNews.com, that's OZ Tech News, and also OzTech News on Twitter.
All right, and you can find me on Twitter at Brad Oz, Tech Webcast, and also Tech Luster. Jacob Jones is starting a new podcast called The Podcast Overlords.
Saw that.
I'm not sure that's going to be...
And you can also find Brad at You Lost the Game.
Yeah, and can I just mention... I want to give a quick shout out to a Aussie hip hop group called Tram. Now I just bought their album last night. Great stuff.
Saw that, yeah.
Yeah. If you're into that sort of type of music, go buy it and play it. It's good stuff.
Cool.
All right. Thanks, guys.
See ya.
See you later.
Hi, Glenn from Aussie Tech Heads. Join Will, Eric and myself as we bring you the latest, most up-to-date, important tech news that affects you from Australia and the world. A weekly podcast available each Friday through iTunes. Watch the live stream recording of the show at live.thesecrethub.com each Thursday night, 7:30pm or GMT plus 10. Call in live via Skype or chat in our lounge. However you get us, just make sure you do. Listen or visit our website for more information, www.aussietechhead.com.au. Aussie Tech Heads, Australia's longest running tech news podcast.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to check out Tech Webcast on blip.tv and subscribe to our podcast on iTunes to make sure you always have the latest episode at your fingertips. Tech Webcast, Tech Talk for Geeks.